I was a kid, my mom tried to teach me piano herself. Then I couldn't take it, and I tried violin, couldn't take that. I did percussion, electric guitar. I was into, skateboarding.
Today's guest is so great. I've been meaning to connect with him for forever, and he just put out an awesome album, which we talk about that and much more here today. I'm Jason Heath. This is Contrabass Conversations, and we are talking today with Nicky Schwartz, who just put out an album with his Oyster Duo, with his wife, Anna, and the album is called Stolen Pearls, and you have to watch the most epic double bass album trailer ever. We start off talking about it. You're going to hear me laughing at the beginning because I just watched it. I don't even know how to describe it. It's got drone shots. There's this castle there. You've got a sword fight going on. Talk about committing to a bit. They discover the pearls for this album. It's just such a fun and just made my day. So definitely check that out. And we talk about Nicky's journey through the music world. He was a member of the Concertgebouw Orchestra. How did he get from being a Boston skateboarder to there, picking up cello, so many cool things. Quick shout out to our sponsors, Dorico, Modacity, and Ear Trumpet Labs. More on them later, but let's get into this conversation with Nicky Schwartz. How's it going?
Hey, Jason. Oh, it's going really well. Great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you too. I just got done watching the music video that you put together for the album with the sword fighting and finding the pearls and everything. That's awesome.
The most unusual CD promo I think you'll ever see.
It's so good. It's
We took the pearl stealing a little literally, I think.
You must have had so much fun putting that together. I mean, it looks like you got drone shots of like you two sword fighting on top of some castle or something. like I saw you put the masks on at the beginning, and I thought, all right, here we go. And then it's just like getting better and better.
Amazing. I'm glad you like it. We got really into creative stuff actually over this last year with the quarantine and whatever. So we had to keep ourselves busy, and that's the outcome.
Oh man, well I love it. Did you script all that out? Like because that's like the sort of thing that I would like have a dream about doing, but would never actually do in real life. Like how did you end up putting all that together? Because I mean, it's great. Like you must have gotten swords from some. You got and like what a.
The funniest thing was that sword fight was actually recorded a year ago almost. So we were staying at that castle because why not, And it's like a castle hotel, but it's privately owned. And they were like, yeah, everything it's not a museum, so you can touch things, you can, and the door to the tower is open. But I don't think they expected us to do this. We just took some swords, which are like lying, like they're real ancient stuff. But they were just sitting. We took it out from there was like a knight, armor knight with like a sword, and we just like took it out, and the drones circling around us. And we thought we have to use this like for. This is going to be like the best video ever, but we didn't know for what yet. And then we fashioned a whole promo kind of like around this video. And my wife actually was the mastermind behind it. She definitely that she doesn't like only to talk about something and not to do it. She likes to talk about something and then do it.
That's incredible. It's okay. So you knew you were sitting on like golden footage for something. You just weren't sure what you're going to use. Okay, that's very cool. That is like definitely, yeah. What a cool story. That's one of the things you forget about. Like I live here in San Francisco. Like access to castles isn't something we really have out here. So.
Yeah, United States too young for that.
Exactly. Man, I love it. Well, how are things right now in the Netherlands, like pandemic wise? I feel like I have to. That's like the obligatory 2021 question.
Well, it's funny that you ask because we got like the news yesterday that a lot of things are opening up, but not culture. The first thing the prime minister says when he goes on television is, "The sex workers are now allowed to work again."
but not ensembles and that sort of thing. No.
That's the Amsterdam for it.
Wow.
No, but it's very strange. The museums, the concert halls, they're not allowed to have basically anybody. At the end of last season, we had a moment where we were playing for like 250 people because they had to make sure that every person would have enough space, even if people were coming as one household. So they didn't have a system yet of knowing. So we were playing to empty halls. We're playing now to empty halls every week. We play, but it's recorded and premiered later as like a recording project. So
you did get some audiences back for a while at least. It's so crazy to me how, because I've talked to folks in Germany and in some cases things have been more open in terms of ensembles and playing, and then here in California, I mean, there hasn't been like a human inside the Davies Hall here in San Francisco since March. I mean, essentially they've started. Well, actually, that's not true. They've started to do like what you're talking about, like stream concerts, but they the June 15th apparently everything is going to be back open. And I think part of that is our governor is being recalled. So all of a sudden he decided to open things up in a hurry. Or maybe not a hurry, but the LA Phil is starting to do, I think they have their Hollywood Bowl schedule out. The Symphony here has announced their schedule. So things are slowly kind of like coming back, but
yeah, next season looks like nothing happened. I mean, the schedule is with like Asia tour, the first European tour in August is the only changes that there have been is like, I think instead of a program with two halves, they made a shorter program and we play it twice, this kind of thing.
Okay.
But I think they're really hoping that everyone will have the vaccination. It's a bit slow here.
Yeah, I was curious because things have it's rolled out pretty well here in the U.S. now. Finally, I got my first shot a couple of weeks ago, and so I'm on my way to be fully vaccinated. But how are things? I know it's really different in different parts of the world. Are you starting to get some vaccinations happening or?
Yeah, there's going to be, there's a new deal that they have 1.5 billion Pfizer vaccines coming or something. But at the moment, I think it's still around like 60 plus who are getting the vaccine, or if you have like a pre-existing condition. So we're kind of like where you were like, I don't know, a few months ago,
yeah.
Maybe.
Well, it's so weird. The weirdest one for me to follow is Australia, like what's happening in Australia, because they've like done a good job of keeping the vaccine at bay, or not the vaccine, keeping the virus at bay, but the vaccine hasn't been rolled out. So it's kind of like maybe a bad analogy, but like a zombie show or something where like everybody's fine, but if anything happens, so, I'm like watching the Queensland Orchestra, they're playing, it's like nothing ever happened, but then something happens and like Perth, I think the Western Australia went into total lockdown for a couple days. It's crazy.
The latest story, because my sister lives in Sydney, so they've had pretty much life as usual, but like they had no cases for like, I don't know, a long time. And then the story came out that a guy looking for barbecue equipment was going, maybe you heard this, was like visiting stores all over the city or in the region looking for something, and infected a bunch of people because he and his wife had no symptoms, but they had corona. And then so the whole area went on like complete lockdown for a few days just in case.
Wow.
Now I think they're easing that up, but yeah, I mean they because they have so few cases, I guess they don't have the as much desire to vaccinate everyone as fast as possible. Here it's like people are totally done with it, first of all, they just want to live normal lives again. But and the vaccine, it's like kind of happening at the same time, but not fast enough. So the numbers are kind of going up still here. So.
Wow.
Not the
People have been saying such great things about my course with Discover Double Bass Beginners Classical Bass. Here is Nicholas Walker, professor of double bass at Ithaca College and past president of the International Society of Bassists. Nicholas writes, Jason draws from this vast network with his contagious enthusiasm and love of learning. Presented through the beautifully organized and easily accessible framework of Discover Double Bass, this is a terrific learning experience for any beginner, as well as a great model for any new teacher. I am blushing, Nicholas. Thank you so much. I'm just so thrilled with how this course came out. Jeff Chalmers and the whole team at Discover Double Bass are so professional. It was such a great experience, and it was the best representation of what I would love to take every single beginner through in terms of format and presentation, and I'm just so happy that it's out there. You can learn more. We've got a link in the show notes, or you can just visit discoverdouble.com/Jason Heath. This episode is brought to you by Ear Trumpet Labs. They make hand-built mics out of Portland, Oregon, and they have an excellent mic for upright bass called Nadine. The Nadine is a condenser mic with a clear, natural sound and incredible feedback rejection. This mic is a completely new design. The head mounts in between the strings above the tailpiece with a rubber grommet, and the body securely straps to the tailpiece with Velcro elastic. A 14-inch Mogami cable connects the two parts, making it easy to place on any bass. It's durable and holds up to the demanding needs of the instrument while offering excellent sound quality. Ear Trumpet Labs is offering a free t-shirt just for Contrabass Conversations listeners with the purchase of a mic. Just visit www.eartrumpetlabs.com/contrabass to claim yours and check out the Nadine. Yeah, it's been interesting here because, you know, San Francisco has okay climate all year. I mean, you can do things outside. And so like music, you know, and then we had this, like most of the world, had this other shutdown in the winter, but things started to come back in the fall. And then the last, 4 months, there's been a lot of music like on the streets, not symphonic music, of course, but like you're just seeing people are so hungry to do things. And it's finally starting to feel a little more positive the last couple of weeks. Like the mask mandate for being outdoors, they lifted in basically the whole U.S., but here in California. And so it's just things are starting to, and you're starting to see, like you're describing, like seasons being announced, you know, for next year. And so slowly but surely, it's been a long 14 months or whatever.
Yeah. We hope that we can put it all behind us pretty soon.
Yeah. Wow. You've been in the Concertgebouw for a while now, haven't you? You're closing in. You're like 8 years at least, something like that.
8th season. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Time flies.
I've only played there in the hall a grand total of one time, but it's like that was one of those memorable experiences. I was doing the Schleswig-Holstein festival back, I don't even know, 20, 30 years, I don't know, far too long ago at this point. But I remember playing on that stage and just that acoustic and that experience and the whole what a cool place it must be to go to work there. You know, like that. I think of concert halls that stand in my mind. Another one obviously is the Sydney Opera House. You know, certainly not the acoustical experience that probably the Concertgebouw is, but just like a hall that you think of as distinctive. And it was so. I went and saw what is that gigantic Messiaen piece, Tarangula or something.
Galila.
Yeah, there you go. I saw that with the Sydney Symphony back like a year and a half ago, and it was hilarious to watch people. You know, that piece is not like new to the scene, but you still see people angrily get up and walk out like partway through because it's like too much.
Yeah. Yeah, half the bass section almost does that. Also in this part with, I don't know if you remember, there's like 4 pages of like terror.
I know. I've only watched it.
I was doing this when I was a student in Pacific Music Festival, and Alois Posh was leading our section. And at some point, he just put his hands up and then starts rowing with his bow like this.
You did that with Pacific Music Festival. Holy cow. What a crazy thing to do. What I did Pacific Music Festival in 2000, I want to say. That was when Michael Tilson Thomas was still conducting at the time, and so I remember we did Mahler 3. So I guess they just love doing big pieces, but we did Mahler 3 outside. You know, it was like 103 Fahrenheit or something like that, and just like, and I remember our bass coach, one of the Vienna players, I'm forgetting the name, but he was like drinking this like giant beer before going out, and I was just thinking like, man, beer plus Mahler 3 plus, you know, scorching plus 100% humidity is like, you got some, that's some serious that's a professional bass player there. We
had issues there with the crows, because they had, I don't know if you remember, the funniest, they don't sound like normal crows, they have this like really crazy way of making crows sound. I don't know. Off this place, some crow would like fly right over the orchestra and make this sound, and then we would just like laugh our heads off, you know, like, we were all biting our tongue trying to hold it.
That's hilarious. I don't remember how they sound, but I remember how they look. They're much larger, if I remember correctly, than normal crows. And I remember being in a park in Tokyo and just seeing them, and it was kind of like watching Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. You're just like sort of seeing this like sort of you're not sure what's up, but it seems like nothing good's about to happen.
Exactly. Yeah.
So this is how these podcasts go, by the way. It's just like hanging out. So I no structure or form or anything like that. And obviously I'll link up to everything. And I'm trying to remember if we have actually met in person. Like, you are a name I've known for my entire life, and I know we have probably 200 people in common at least. But I don't know if we've run into each other at an ISB festival or one of those Bass Europe events. I just can't remember.
We brushed shoulders, but didn't really talk at one of those things. Yeah, I mean, it's likewise. I've been listening to your podcast since I was a student, since I was in high school, because I was also didn't know anything and was so curious about the world bass and everything. And, you forever as well. It's an honor to be now.
Well, it's long overdue. You've been I've kept this Google sheet for years of like people make a recommendation and you were on there I don't know how many times. So, and it's funny like knowing that you listened to this in high school. I forget how long I've been doing this. I remember talking to Alex Hanna, principal of Chicago Symphony. This is like 6 years ago. We had this conversation, and he said, "Oh yeah, I remember when I was preparing for auditions, I would listen to your podcast." And like, dang! But part of it was I started like weirdly early, and then I had all these great guests, not because I knew anybody, but I had a friend who knew everybody, this guy named John Grill, and so I had Ed Barker was like one of the early guests, and it was like the Stone Age for podcasts. I had these like horrible audio equipment, and it was like a found recording from the 20s or something, but
Yeah, I remember that interview because I went on to study with Ed, actually. Yeah, that was...
Right, I know. Yeah, well, it was fun. It was fun for me to do those, and it's almost like I had two podcasts. Like I had that stuff I did back in the mid 2000s, and then I started doing other things and just got busy. And then I went back in 2015. I was trying to figure out what to do with my life because I knew I was moving out here to San Francisco, and I went and I looked at some of those episodes, like Ed Barker. I'm like, dang, it's like I don't know, like 40,000 listens to this thing, you know, of me like stumbling through. I don't even think I probably even talked. It was probably John that did all the asking, but I just sort of realized like, wow, that's so it's been fun to like reboot it, and but it's hilarious to like, you know, I sort of forget that I have been, it's been like 14 years I've been banging away at this thing.
That's a record.
It's something. I don't know. I just put out episode 800 today, so it's crazy. So we'll have to have you. We'll have to have you on. It can't be another 800 episodes before we do a round two with you.
Wow, amazing! You probably know the whole bass world by now. I mean,
I know more than I did. Well, it's been fun for me, just because it's the sort of thing that I would want to do with my time anyway. Because it's just sort of like a good personal development project. Like I'd want to talk to you anyway. We didn't have to have a podcast, but we're just so busy, and like you and I, we live on the other sides of the globe. It's just hard to find the time, right? So this is like a good excuse to chat, and then that it goes out in the world is better. So it's kind of like one of those. I think of it as like a good habit for me, like working out or practicing or something. So, but it's it's fun. I don't know how I ended up doing this, but apparently here we are. So.
Amazing. Yeah, I think now podcasts are only getting more popular, right? So
yeah, it's so weird. You're right. Like when I started the iPhone, I don't think the iPhone had even come out yet, and I think that was a big deal for podcasting because it used to be. I got into them in like 2005, listening to them. I had the iPod video. You know, like the first. I remember I would watch Lost, the TV show on it, with a little screen that was like 2 inches, and I would have to, you download it all on your computer and sync it up. But then as soon as it started to be more seamless, it's definitely taken off. But I wasn't the first double bass podcast. There was another one by the principal bass of the Tenerife Symphony, I believe. He did one called the Double Bass Cast, and he did 6 episodes and then quit. And I've never heard from. I've reached out to him. I was like, dude, we got to do an episode. Let's talk about like OG bass podcasting. I haven't heard back from him, but I'll keep working on that.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah. You have to go to visit Tenerife and do one together. That's how.
Well, I would love to. Well, what I'd gotten into the groove of, why I was in Sydney, and of course nobody's been going anywhere this last year plus, but I'd been getting out of doing remote podcasts. I've been trying to like go and be like a bass journalist. Like I would go to a place for 2 weeks and I would talk to like 20. Like that's what I did in Australia. I went to Rob Nairn was hosting the Melbourne Bass Festival, so I went to Melbourne, Sydney, and talked to, I don't know, maybe 15 people for the podcast. And like I saw concerts, I saw the Australian, is it Australian Chamber Orchestra, I believe is the title, the one in Sydney there, Maxime Bibot, and got to play his Gasparo de Salo. And so so I'm long overdue. So whenever we can travel again, I'm headed your direction. So we'll have to do a round 2, maybe over some beverages at some point in the future.
Yeah, and I come and have a barbecue on the roof terrace.
Oh, that would be wonderful. I have so many great memories of those few days I spent in Amsterdam, but that was 1998. How long ago was that? 25 years it's been at least since I've been there. So I'm long overdue. So this is a great time of year to be in Amsterdam, probably, right? This is is it raining in the winter typically? Is that kind of the deal, or did you get a lot of snow there? I was only there in the summer, so I don't know.
It's super rare that it becomes like really wintry here.
Okay.
This winter it's one of like Dutch people's favorite things ever is when the canals freeze and they can go ice skating on the canals, but it like never happens anymore. It happened this winter though. We had an incredible, it's just glorious for like months and months, and then the winter was real winter with like snowstorms and frozen canals, and we were just going in the park here, walking on the ponds and everything. This is really magical, but very rare now. It's like 20, 30 years ago it was doing this every year, but the weather's kind of changed, as has everywhere. But
right.
But it's like kind of gray and rainy is the typical Dutch weather.
This episode is brought to you by Dorico, the advanced music notation software from Steinberg. And one of the features that perplexed me at first, and then I realized its brilliance, is their concept of flows. Here is Daniel Spreadbury, Senior Product Manager, on what flows are and how they work.
The ability to have multiple exercises or multiple songs or whatever, it's so obvious because music is very rarely just one through composed bit from start to end, whether it's a show or a symphony or a sonata or a songbook or whatever. Music's in sections. That's just how it works.
That is how it works, but that's not how most music notation software works. And the ability to break things up like that, oh my goodness. When I'm creating exercises or anything of the sort for my students or any sort of project that I have going, that makes organization so much easier. Exporting is a breeze. Everything that you do in Dorico is beautiful from the get-go, which is really cool coming from other pieces of software. Check them out at Dorico.com. That'll take you to their site on Steinberg's website. And they have a free product called Dorico SE where you can do practically everything that you can in the full version of Dorico for up to 2 parts. That's more than enough if you're doing bass duets or anything of the like. Thank you so much for sponsoring the podcast, Dorico. I'm here with Mark Gelfer from Modacity, who has a quick tip for you on how to better your practice.
That was it, folks. Silence is the tip for you today. Even taking 5 seconds or 10 seconds to put the instrument down in between reps, recenter your body, recenter your mind, and find a little bit of inner stillness is going to help you consolidate what you've just learned and help start building that process. It's also going to take it out of short-term memory so that when you practice the thing next, it's going to be more of a focus of putting it into long-term retention and recall, which is what you really want to build. You don't want just stuff floating around in your short-term memory. So take those moments of silence, take as many as you want. It's free and it's really powerful.
You can learn more about my favorite practice app and get a special deal on lifetime membership by visiting modacity.co/CBC. And thank you, Modacity, for sponsoring the podcast. Yeah, because you grew up in Boston, right? Boston area, so like, which is not known. Yeah. Boston's awesome, but not known for its great weather either. So I guess that maybe you're.
Oh, yeah, they have extremes. So they have huge snowstorms and some hot summers too. Did you ever do anything at Tanglewood when you were a student? Or
only I played.
Spend some time out there.
Yes, I did, but I never did the Tanglewood Festival. But I did play at Tanglewood. I played in this wacky orchestra that doesn't exist anymore called the American Russian Youth Orchestra. It used to be the American Soviet Youth Orchestra. That was my first time out of the country, and that was like definitely one of the. It's so bad that so sad it doesn't exist anymore because it was definitely like, talk about a way to get out of the United States. It was like, went way into Russia, went to Siberia. We had pistols pulled on us in Moscow. It was just one of those like overseas adventures that you can't, like, we started 50% Americans, 50% Russians. And they, one American music director, one Russian music director. The rep was split just like that. We did the first part in the US. And so we played at Tanglewood, played at Carnegie Hall, and then a bunch of the Russian musicians decided we're just going to stay in the U.S. and they just like disappeared in New York City. No one ever heard from them again. They just decided to. So we had to get like 5 new Russian. I know, it's hilarious. So we had to get 5 new Russian musicians once we got over to Russia. But so yeah, long answer. Yes, but just at Ozawa Hall, and I'd love to spend some more time up there. But I'm sure you spent. Did you ever do Tanglewood, the festival itself?
Yeah, also, so yeah, when I was a kid, my parents brought me to Tanglewood, just sitting out on the lawn playing my old school Game Boy, and I hated classical music at that time. I definitely thought it was boring and was more interested in, little things kids are interested in. But then later I ended up doing the BU Tanglewood Institute, and then later normal Tanglewood Institute, and it's just been a long part of my history. My mom's a pianist and my dad's a music lover, so they brought me to concerts when I was a kid, whether I liked it or not, so I guess somehow it stuck. But
well, you were into skateboarding too when you were young, right? Do you still skate at all?
Yeah, well, I have one, and sometimes I do, but I'm kind of careful with it now because not made out of rubber anymore. It's like when I was a kid. But in the Netherlands, what's kind of popular is kite surfing.
Really? Oh wow!
Yeah, because the whole coast is is ideal for it. So it's super popular, and I started doing that a couple years ago. And it's
awesome.
great. I mean, it's, you don't have, not so heavy on the hands. You can get your fix of like board sport things, but also when you crash, you don't have like usually bad impacts or something.
Yeah, that's the issue with skateboard. My wife's a doctor, and she, as soon as we came out to San Francisco, she said she'd never heard of so many cases of 50-year-old man skateboard accident. But that's like a very common thing in San Francisco. A lot of folks. We got the ocean here, and so of course surfing's a big deal here. And Dan Smith, who's the latest member of the San Francisco Symphony, he's gotten really into surfing. And do you know Dan?
Well, I remember when he got the job. I don't think I really know him much, but I think did he come on the podcast at some point?
Yeah, maybe a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago. But really nice, just the nicest guy imaginable. One heck of a bass player. But like, what a great balance, to like get outdoors like that, either kite surfing or kite sailing or surfing or whatever. It just seems like such a nice way to like clear your head and get into nature. Diego Zacharias in North A Coruña, North. The Galicia Symphony, I think, is his orchestra. He lives around the ocean too, and he goes swimming like almost every day. Just gets in that water, and what a cool way! If you live somewhere where you've got that access, what a great way to start your day.
Nice way to spend the day at the beach and just after rehearsal or something. But did you know actually? You know Stephen Tramatazzi, right?
Sure.
Mm-hmm. Well. So we, San Francisco Symphony was on tour here just like a few years ago, and he was saying, "Oh, I'm selling my Panormo bass," and then I think we started looking, like the orchestra started looking for bass, and there was that connection, and I knew him from the Boston Bass Bash, like way back when. He was like the first bass player I ever saw, like looking like this, and was amazed, playing solo pieces on the bass. I never played in composition at that point, and then I was like, that whole thing kind of came full circle when he's like, yeah, the bass is for sale, and then the orchestra actually ended up buying it, so we're playing his bass.
Wow.
In the orchestra. My colleague Dominic Seldes plays on it. But that's my San Francisco Symphony connection.
That's awesome. What a small world, right?
Yeah.
Well, I first met Steve way back in the day too. At the Pacific Music Festival. Actually, he was one of the bass coaches, and I remember. I don't know if Steve wants me saying this on the podcast, but I'll be like. But we had this wild party. We went deep in Japan. And I just remember everybody ended up like in the bathroom, not in good shape at a certain point. Like, it was karaoke was involved, all sorts of. I don't remember. It was a long time ago, but that was one of my I have good memories from Steve then, and it's been fun to get to know him better out here.
Must have been during the Sapporo Beer Festival, because they do coincide, the Festival of Music and the Beer Festival, so it's just like a perfect storm.
Yeah, it was yes, that was a debauchery, like lots of folks like around like 23 years old, me included at the time, and that was definitely the most fun I've ever had in a month. I think still in my life, probably.
Yeah, good times also for me.
What did you think you were gonna, like, when did you get serious about bass? Because I mean, you're from a musical family. Were obviously like me, I got dragged to concerts. At a certain point, I think for me it was heavy metal that got me into it, which is not a fairly common way actually for bassists. But like, what lit the spark for you?
Well, the story starts kind of early on with when I was a kid. My mom tried to teach me piano herself. Then I I couldn't take it, and I tried violin, couldn't take that. I did percussion, electric guitar. I was into, skateboarding and rock and roll and stuff. But then at some point I was playing, I also played saxophone. I did every year I did something else. And I was playing electric bass and saxophone in a town-wide ensemble. And we did some jazz tunes in that group. And I was like, yeah, it's okay, but it doesn't really sound that cool. You have to play upright bass if you gotta play walking bass lines. So that was actually the trigger. It was like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to play, double bass? And then to convince my parents. And then it just so happened that my first teacher, Andy Blickendorfer, he's Juilliard trained bass player, but he also plays jazz, and he taught me both etudes and stuff, along with some of the early, he would write blues songs for my lessons, and we would do both. But and that led to youth orchestras, and then it just kind of, at some point I decided I had an opportunity at Berkeley to do a pretty high level ensemble in the summer. They have this 6-week program, and then they have this kind of, I don't know what they call lead ensemble, which would be really in the trajectory of full scholarship to school and that direction. And BU Tanglewood Institute. So I really, actually at that moment, kind of decided that would be the direction I would go, because I was thinking, okay, then I have to prepare for school auditions, and I was already thinking about ed and getting to know the symphony guys and everything. But I still love jazz, and I play sometimes. I'm starting to play with some gypsy jazz groups here.
Oh, cool! I've heard good things about Amsterdam's jazz scene. Do they have? Is it? I mean, I know that all cities global. If you look at the trend, the last 30 years, it's probably not. More places are closing than not. But does it have a pretty good jazz scene?
It has I think it has a really good school. So the conservatory is a great department, and because it's one of the few places that really speaks English for bachelor students. So a lot of Spanish come up, or from all over, and this part of Europe, actually more and around the border between Germany, Netherlands, and France, is kind of center of this gypsy jazz. So they're really Sinti musician families that live together and just play all day. I mean, it's amazing. You must have heard of the Rosenberg Trio, maybe?
I have, but remind me, or remind folks listening, I guess, or let them know.
Yeah. Guitarists and the bass player, and they're quite famous here, but the Rosenberg family is huge. So so I just randomly bumped into some gypsy jazz musicians at a bar after an opera concert. I just needed to have a beer, and nobody else wanted to go out, so I just was wandering down the street, and I heard this geez, these guys are amazing. They're just playing in this bar, And I go in there, and it was almost the end of their gig, and I started to talk with who was in charge, and they're just oh, bass players. I always need bass players, so give me your number. So it's been a fun thing, kind of to combine the classical and jazz. It's a really nice kind of middle ground to some of the ball.
Yeah, it's got to be nice to do something outside of the orchestra. It seems like most people got to find a way to scratch that itch a little bit, just doing something a little bit different, or maybe you're create, and obviously you got the duo that you're doing too, and so, but playing that's cool. Playing gypsy jazz that's got to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I did a kind of weird trajectory, because first I started kind of as a jazz bass player, and then I became a classical bass player. Normally, maybe people go from classical to jazz. And then lately, I also started playing cello.
Yeah. What inspired you to do that? It's got to be fun to do. And you sound great, by the way. I've checked out a couple YouTube videos of you playing.
Yeah, so it started as like a summer project, and the orchestra has a couple of backup instruments, modern cellos, and I just was like, it's okay if I just for the summer maybe borrow it for a couple months, and then they said, yeah, just don't tell anybody. And then I just kept on going with it, and it's been 4 years now, and I now I'm starting to really perform on both, and it's been amazing. just to play more together with Anna, and maybe more chamber music opportunities. I do as little as I can in the orchestra. I have like 20% part-time less, which in the Netherlands everyone can take, like, this like a government thing. You can take 20% part-time from your job. So, and then I, for those weeks, do different chamber music projects, and with Anna we do a lot of different stuff, and the cello is just to broaden the horizons of possible. My teacher, Ed, I think once was saying, if you want to play that kind of stuff, or like, but it's playing like in the stratosphere on the bass, and it's like, why not just play it on the cello? I think he was making a joke when he said that, but I took it kind of literally. I was like, I'm just gonna play Frank Sonata on the cello, because otherwise it just doesn't sound right. So
it's got to be. I am not a I play a little cello, not a proficient cellist by any means, but boy, the feeling of like going to that instrument after all the bass playing, it's like I feel like it's little easy bass that I just don't play particularly well. But like Da Shun Zhang picked up the cello maybe 8-9 years ago or something like that, and he's been playing concertos, and it's got to be a cool feeling. Is there like a transition? It's like if I go over somewhere where you drive on the left side of the road, that like freaks me out for a little while, and then I figure it out. Does your brain have to adjust, or are you like have you done enough cello now that you just like boom, you're in cello mode?
That's a sensitive topic. I don't know. Sometimes it feel like it really takes a while. It's more because the notes are in different places. So.
Right.
The way if you like really practiced something and you have the music and you're kind of following along, it's kind of fine. But when you play by ear, this took me a long time. That the fifth isn't across like this, but it's across like that. You have to think like everything is a step lower, and it's an A string. So all the notes, instead of a C being there, it's a C is where the B flat is. So you really have to just think like it's a step lower on the top string. And then, for a while I even tuned my bass in fifths because I was getting so frustrated. And my first day with fifths tuning was Mahler 5 in the orchestra.
That's a lot of notes to have to like readjust, to all of a sudden be playing a lot of stepwise motion in like every possible key.
Yeah, the funniest is when everyone's like honking on a low G, and I'm there with my open G, and I'm like, but it works as well. But then I just figured that I sometimes borrow basses, or I also with jazz, like, or the pieces I already know. I'm just gonna stick with like the fourths, and hopefully it will get easier, and it has. But sometimes it does. It's a little bit like smaller muscles, So sometimes it takes 20 minutes to feel like back on cello. then going from cello to bass, it becomes actually really much easier somehow.
Really? That's fascinating. Wow.
Yeah, somehow I think my playing improved somehow. Like the target gets bigger, and my flexibility in my hand is more subtle, and I'm being...
No, it makes sense to me. I started on violin, and I am not a violinist at all, but when I was teaching orchestra in the public schools, I realized how useless it was to demonstrate on bass, like for the orchestra, because I'd have to be like, hold on, and I'd like go to the back of the orchestra and like play something, and the violinist wouldn't know what I was demonstrating because it was so low. So I started to practice violin again, and it got depressing because I realized I was able to think faster on the violin than on bass. All of a sudden, I was like, oh, I have so much more dexterity on violin. It's just because it's this tiny little thing. And I think maybe the transition is so great from violin to bass. Maybe I didn't notice like that benefit, but it does make sense that you're just kind of like working your muscles, but also your brain in different ways on the smaller instrument.
Yeah. But it gets easier, and actually now going back to my first teacher, he teaches bass mainly, but also other strings, and he plays cello as well. So I don't know if that was all influenced from that time, but being like the jazz classical cello guy, he is really rubbed off onto me. And last time he was here in Amsterdam, we reconnected after more than 10 years, and we're just like talking, would it be cool to like have a piece where we jump between instruments,
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple months later he was like, I wrote that piece we were talking about. And it's called Canal Variations. And so we're going to play this on the concert on Saturday. We're doing a live stream CD presentation concert. We're going to throw this on there too. Where one variation on cello, and then a jump to the bass, and then some jazzy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes.
Cool. I can't wait to check that out. I love all the promo you've been doing for this album, by the way. It's very fun to follow along with, and like and I got that email from Madeline from the ISB, and like it's super cool. That fifths tuning thing, I've thought about that a lot too. I'm actually talking to Travis Harrison in a couple weeks, who's a bassist up in Toronto and works with Joel Quarrington on some projects. Travis plays in fifths, and I've thought about playing around. I have sort of a similar thing where you're describing, where I borrow a lot of basses, and I've always been nervous to do anything that's not too standard because I don't want to get used to it and then like not be able to play the bass.
Yeah, I had that scare like with playing the cello, like, is my bass playing really gonna suffer? And but I had already been in the orchestra for 6 years, and I was like, what the heck? I always have the job, and but I think you just get it, like when you play on many different instruments, you just get a lot faster at switching, and just like, okay, I need to know where the D is, and then your reference point, and you can kind of more easily adapt. And I think the same thing happens. I play in 5-string bass in the orchestra, so my low string is a B. The low string on the cello is C. With the solo tuning on my bass here, my ears and fingers are completely, it's like a big brain massage.
I think it's good for us to not get too trapped into one way, and especially with bass, because the shapes are so different. We're so much less standardized. I think that people sometimes get trapped in like they can't play anything except their bass on their stool, in the exact sort of setup. And the more I've borrowed basses and played on other basses, the more I adapt. Artem Cherkov, who I believe is still principal bassist in.
I know Artem, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's St. Petersburg he's principal, but he came here in San Francisco maybe 4 years ago, came through and played a recital, borrowed a bass, sounded fabulous on just a bass he picked up earlier that day. And I was talking to him and he said he actually likes borrowing basses. And I don't know if anybody else besides him actually likes it, but he says he's used to adjusting. He likes the community aspect of like finding a local bass player and kind of getting to know them and someone in the community finding a really good bass for him. And he has this whole routine. I don't remember exactly before, like doing shifting exercises and stuff just to sort of acquaint himself with the bass. But my goodness, he's like finding notes out of nowhere on this bass that he just picked up. I mean, he can do anything, but still, it was a really interesting perspective from him.
Yeah, I totally. When you're so used to your thing, it's like after Corona, you're so used to being at home, you can't imagine an airplane. But then in normal times, you're just flying here and there, and it's totally no big deal, And it's the same. Used to it. It's just
I know it's so crazy. I'm flying. Actually, funny you'd mention that. I'm flying for the first time since the pandemic broke out tomorrow. And so this morning, I got my phone, got my boarding pass. It was like the first time I'd gotten a boarding pass on my phone in over a year. And I have on my list of things to do today, pack. It's like the last time I wrote pack was March 1st, I think, 2020. So, but I know that I look forward to making that a habit again. But yeah, it has been crazy. Like I've barely even left my neighborhood the last 14 months, it's and to think like the first 3 months of 2020, I was in, I don't know, multiple countries and just didn't think twice, like going to the airport wouldn't even cross my mind, but it's like a big deal for me tomorrow. Like, whoa, the airport, I've got 3 alarms set.
Or something, and like forget how to pack or something. And when in 5 minutes, you know what you need, and you know what you need, and then I guess it's. I always bring my bow, of course, and strings I like, and now maybe an end pin I like, and that's enough to like feel like it responds more or less in the way that I'm used to and I like.
It's a beautiful way. You're like a flute player, For me, the bow. I travel with my bow sometimes, but not all the time. And so my bow is the thing that I am the most likely to lose, and I have left it many places. I've left it at the train station. I've never lost it, but I've left it, and I've left it enough that I'm like not nervous because it's always. I mean, someone could easily steal it, but no one has. So that's the one thing. Like I never forget my backpack or my roller bag or anything, but I'm like just like not always carrying my bow when I'm traveling, and so I just have to like bow. I got to get one of those new Apple Air tags or whatever they call them for the bow or something to just keep a handle on it. Yeah, one of these days I will lose my bow. I know, but it hasn't happened yet. But
yeah. What did I want to say? Yeah, I played on some interesting basses. I had some funny experiences of the bass where, like, for instance, the groove in the bridge wasn't deep enough on the E string, and then when I was playing the Oyster Duo, where this is like heavy, stuff on the E string, and then it just fell right off right in the concert.
No. That's the end of that's what you can't. How do you recover from that? You got to stop, I guess. Or do
I like try to keep my form and my cool, and just kind of like detune a bit, like put like it's part of the show, put it back up, and then again it falls off.
Well, I guess with Schnitka, that can be out there enough that you could. It's within the realm of believability. That could be part of the piece. But boy, that happens so rarely to us bassists that things happen to our strings. Like on the rare occasion I have broken a string, it's like it feels like the whole world fell out. That must have been a freaky feeling to have the E string like pop off. Like I mean, I guess if you're even on cello, you break an A string sometimes. Violin, you break strings all the time. It's kind of like you're used to that feeling, but that is an alarming feeling on the bass.
Yeah, it's like, what just happened? Like, I thought it broke at first, and it's like, that's impossible. It's an E string, but another time, well, often, you know, you have to put like, I got one bass where it was like, basically the 4 strings were flat like this. And I had to put varying levels of paper folded like 10 times onto the G string so I could actually bow it, you know, and with like a hole in the side. But in the end, it really like sounded fine.
Wow.
like a pop bass that sounded okay.
I think my weirdest bass borrowing experience was I got 2 bass. This is when I was teaching high school orchestra. I took my group to Cuba, and we had 2 basses that I had a travel person had somehow rented in Cuba, and it was like the shadiest deal ever because everything's done in cash in Cuba. So I had like $800 in U.S. cash, and they're like, and it was dark. I don't know, like we gotten delayed, and so there was like this Cuban van, and they're like, come into the van, and I'm thinking like, all right, this is how it ends, Jason. And they go in, and there were these 2 basses. The cases were like falling apart. I'm like giving them a giant wad of cash, you know, for either drugs or basses. I'm not sure. And they were the freakiest basses. I don't even know if you could call them basses. Those poor students had to. And I don't think I'll ever see anything in that crazy a shape again. But holes in the bass and flat bridges. That's not a good scene.
Yeah. I even played without the low string because, I just played a 3-string bass. That was my only time I played a 3-string bass. But and I was playing. I mean, I had to basically rewrite just a couple parts of like, I don't know, Tarantella. We were playing, you know, real stuff. And then suddenly the low string is an A and not an E, and it's a bit like I'm like fingering the fingerboard without a string there. But, yeah, it's all part of the fun, I guess. And I should tell you another time actually how I met Anna, because this is a kind of travel-based travel story, but we were traveling. Yeah, so it was a festival in Brazil, and I was going with my bass. And I checked in here in Amsterdam, and the plane was connecting in Lisbon. And it just so happened that the baggage handlers were on strike in Lisbon. So none of the bags got on the plane. The whole plane was lined up at like this counter with like no computers. It was just like taking little slips of paper, you know, with like handwritten addresses and stuff. And we were like shoving, like trying to like get this little piece of paper where we were, and then the bass was completely missing for like the whole week. And the guy, they were like, well, we will give you the professor's bass for the week. You know, it was Italian bass, and the bass, the strings were like this high off the fingerboard, and I thought it was like a, I don't know, E natural neck or something, and I was just like couldn't, you know. And then it may have been a nice bass, but it was just like an abominable setup. And but I took one of the students' basses, and I actually at the end of the week I was like, I need to like own this bass. It's so good. I like it. And my bass finally arrived on the last day of the festival. I didn't play a note on it. I played the whole time on the other. But I didn't miss it, you know. It's just at least it arrived.
That is crazy. That to that extent, and then you get the bass that like is unplayable. Ugh, that's a stressful week.
That's funny. I was like, I didn't want to offend him, you know, because it was the professor's instrument. But and another time we were going to the Ukraine because my wife is Ukrainian, and they denied that it was a double bass. No, it's a cello, you know. And when was it made? In 1872. And, oh, they didn't make double basses then. And there were the whole crowd of them, like completely fascinated. And then I was like playing good for them, and they had never seen something like that before. But
you don't expect to get a history lesson when you're like in transit like that. Yeah, they didn't make double basses. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So they knew, of course, but they were experts. a lot of bass adventures. Now, I thought I'd make my life easier by learning the cello, but now I have to go to the gig with the bass and the cello.
Right. Yeah, as you're getting pieces written for.
I get the cello on my back and I'm wheeling the bass. It looks like a clown show. Barely visible.
That's hilarious. Hey, when did you think about recording the album? Has this been a long time coming, or has this been like a pandemic project for you two?
No, well, actually, we started recording it back in 2017, even. So
Wow.
It's been a kind of long-term project, and even at the label we started with kind of disappeared, and so we were lucky that the label Anna Works with took it on, which is a really great one. Channel Classics. They also did some of Rick's Tine CDs and stuff, and so they've been really helpful getting the word out, and but these were basically mostly pieces that we had been playing over the years, and we really liked playing it, and that we thought really worked on the bass. It's called Stolen Pearls because it's almost all transcriptions that some of them we really discovered on our own. This Ginastera, it's an amazing piece, which is so underplayed. It's like there are almost no recordings on YouTube of even people singing it. It's like the Defia 5 songs, but it's just a hidden gem, really. It's great. And then we did a kind of version of Gershwin also on it, that kind of with a little improv, and she does some improving in there, and Rachmaninoff's song that was Anna's recommendation. This really works perfectly. So that was the idea. And then the Battassini is a kind of an encore of sorts.
Sure, that's what it seems like. Yeah, you like round it out with the Bazzini. Yeah.
On the bass.
It's great. I mean, you both sound fabulous, and again, like world's greatest double bass related music video with the sword fight and the fighting the pearls and everything.
Yeah, they first made that for Classic FM, and because we thought they were saying that they were more open-minded and adventurous, but then I think it was even a bit much for them. So that's why we made that other Schumann video. But yeah, we got to get that video out. This sword fighting.
Yeah, well, I will link up to that. I just shared it out because I was like, oh my goodness, this is what fun way to start my day off. And yeah, no, it's awesome. I can't wait to. I'm sure it takes a lot to put something like this together. So, but I'm sure you got ideas for album number 2 in the future, whenever that may be. But we should connect. We should connect. Certainly.
Yeah, I think the next one has to have some double bass cello jumping, and I don't know what some new pieces that we also Anna's father has written some amazing bass and piano stuff, and actually there's a cool piece. We have to get it published or something, but that he wrote called 6 Confused Diffusions on a theme by Chopin, and we have to submit it to a composition competition or something because it's really cool.
Wow!
So that we have to record some of these new pieces for bass and cello, and I don't know. I guess it's happening, but we have to show that it's possible, like the way violinists can play viola or vice versa.
Yeah. I love it. I can't wait to check out the second album too. Whenever that happens, let's definitely do a podcast whenever that comes out. And when do you guys make it the orchestra? Do you ever come out to the States to tour, or have you made it out to California to tour?
I wish to California. I normally when we go to New York, Washington D.C. And I think the last time they went to Chicago, but because of the distance, I guess
the distance is rough. I learned that because I used to live in Chicago. Flying to Western Europe from Chicago is not a big deal, like 8 hours or something. But you got like another 6 hours to get across the country, right? Like, it just takes a long. Like I went to Leeds at the beginning of 2020, and I had to do San Francisco to Philadelphia or Boston, I think, and then to Dublin, and then Leeds. But like, you add 6, all of a sudden that turns into an epic. Well, so I'll probably be in Amsterdam before you're in San Francisco. But let's looking forward to meeting up in person, and let's do this again. And it's long overdue, Nicky. I'm glad. We found some time to chat, and congrats on the album. It rocks. It's awesome. Nicky, thank you so much for chatting. We got to do it again soon. Folks, check out Stolen Pearls anywhere you get your music, Spotify or iTunes. iTunes, is that right now? Apple Music or anywhere like that. And links are in the show notes. Definitely check out that video that we were laughing about. It is awesome. It will make your day. And can't wait to do it again soon. One of the cool things for me personally about doing this podcast, get to connect with people I've wanted to connect with more deeply for years. I mean, Nicky has been on my list for so long, and album releases obviously are a good time to connect, or releases such as that. And I had so much fun chatting with him. Hope you had a good time listening to this. Thank you for listening to this. Maybe this is your first episode. Maybe this is your 807th episode, or whatever number we're on for this one. But I appreciate you taking the time and listening to this outro, these unedited, sometimes slightly awkward outros as I try to do something in my life that's not edited. This is number 2 of 4. I sit down and do 4 of these episodes, my little intros and outros at a time, which means I do 8 of these little mini recordings. And it's like I don't not like it, but it's like my least favorite part of doing the podcast for some reason. I don't know why. My favorite is certainly having the conversation that you listen to. Not that these are hard, but I don't know. I don't know what it is. What's wrong with me, Jason? I'm looking forward to going to Texas. I'm going to be recording a bass duo. It is a somber duo. It's a memorial to 9/11, which is the 20-year anniversary coming up here, with my friend George Amarim. And I'm just really looking forward to doing that. That's going to be broadcast or whatever the term is for the virtual International Society Bassist Convention. And is that going to have already happened by the time this episode comes out? No. Okay. I'm just looking at this. I think this is coming out on June 3rd. So if you are you planning on checking it out? I am. How's it going to be? I don't know. First time ISB has done a virtual convention like that. One of the great things, of course, this is obvious to everybody, is that you can connect so much more easily anywhere in the world just by logging on versus making a trip to, it was going to be in Lincoln, Nebraska, making a trip to Lincoln, Nebraska. The disadvantage, of course, is, oh my goodness, I'm so sick of sitting in front of the computer, and I just really want to get out and see my friends and meet new people and do new things. And I'm so happy that things are starting to open up and loosen up here in California, in the United States, that I'm finally getting on planes again, and finally left the city of San Francisco. It's the longest time I've ever spent in one city in my entire life, actually, and you might be in a similar boat. So I hope that things are going well where you are. Let's close out here. Thank the team, Michael Cooper, Steve Hinchy, Mitch Mooring, and Trevor Jones. Mitch makes beautiful basses and does a fabulous job editing these podcasts, putting these podcasts together. Thank you, Mitch. And check out his basses, mitchmooring.com, award-winning basses. I am your host, Jason Heath, and we will see you again soon for more life on the low end of the spectrum.